Yes, this is, yes, so we're ready to go. Okay, sorry to keep you guys waiting. Okay. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place of this meeting was given by posting prominently on the official bulletin board in the municipal complex, 400 Witherspoon Street, a schedule of the regular meetings of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission for the year 2025, which posting is to be maintained throughout the year, and by transmitting a copy of such schedule to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, the Trenton Times, and Comcast Cable of New Jersey, and by filing a copy thereof with the Clerk of Princeton, New Jersey. Elizabeth, do you want to take the roll?
Yes.
Thank
Ms. Satterfield? Here. Mr. Shatskin? Here. Ms. Howard?
Here.
Mr. Shore is absent. Mr. Endersby?
Here.
Ms. Friedman? Chairperson Capizzoli.
Here. Let's see, do you have any announcements, Elizabeth?
Just to remind people that the New Jersey Historic Trust Conference is coming up on June 4th and 5th, I believe. And I think that there are a few people here who had talked about having an interest, and if anyone wants to carpool, we can talk about that as well later. Oh, Charlotte's here. Okay, Charlotte arrived.
Okay, so
Thank
we can maybe talk about that at the end. We have minutes from November 18th. As far as I can tell, Elric, Charlotte, Shirley, Roger, Frida, and myself were all there. Does anyone have any changes or suggestions for the minutes? Okay. You want to turn on your...
There's a blank spot there where it requires that the attorney record be filled in. There's some yellow highlighting.
Right, it's asking about who the
Yeah.
attorney was and who was there. I think they worked that out.
If that can be supplied, it's fine.
Yeah, so Ian, that's worked out, right?
Right, yep.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
So,
Did you get that, Ian?
sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
There was a spot where there was a question, it was yellowed, as to whether Roger had voted.
Yes, I
Yeah.
re-listened to it. Yes, he did. Yep, he voted yes.
Okay.
Okay, great. So with all that, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Okay, thanks, Roger. Second? Thanks, Frida. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, we have a resolution for 354 Quaker Road, the Updike Farmstead, the wagon shed barn demolition and reconstruction. Anyway, I think we're moving forward with that. Elizabeth, are there any changes to the resolution?
No, but I just wanted to update the HPC that there was a site meeting as we had discussed at the meeting, that Elric, Alex came out in addition to John Harrison, who's their structural engineer, and Ronnie Breginger, who's the architect, Julie, and other Historic Preservation Commission members. Historical Society people, and there was an agreement made. The plans have been revised and updated and submitted. I reviewed them with Ronnie there. They look fine. She's going to submit 6 sets to the planning office because it is administrative waiver, and they're just waiting for that to come through before they sign off.
Okay, so it looks like we're okay to go forward with the resolution.
Yes.
So is there a motion to?
Well, I mean, it's in the future tense on the last page.
Yeah, I mean, that talks about what happened at the meeting, so.
So I guess it's a resolution of what we said at the meeting.
Right.
Okay.
you want to move approval? Or would someone like to make a motion to approve that resolution? Okay. Elric, a second? Okay, thanks, Frida. Okay, so Elric made a motion, Frida seconded. Do you want to take a roll vote, Elizabeth, or can we just do a voice vote?
It's up to you. I could do
Okay,
either one.
so all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, thank you.
I want
Yes,
to make one point, and that is that we were shown their intentions for the big event barn, the Woji barn. I want to make sure that it's understood that this resolution has nothing to do with that building, because that
Right.
will eventually come before us.
and that's not in the resolution at all, so we will see them again soon. There's a resolution for Nassau Presbyterian Church, 61 Nassau Street. I think everyone was here for that. Would someone like to make a motion to approve this resolution? Okay, thanks, Charlotte. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thanks, Roger. All in favor? Yes?
Pardon me, I just want to make sure, afterwards, we came up with an alternative, and Elizabeth had a conversation with the woman who presented, and so is it what we saw, or has it been changed at all since we had that?
So if you recall at the meeting, and I had a conversation with Linda Gilmore, who was a representative for the church, in addition to Lisa Maddox, who represented HPC at that meeting. And what she wanted to do is she actually wanted to put sidelights, but after going back and listening to the recording several times, myself and Lisa, it was clear that no one wanted those sidelights. They wanted simplified, and that if she wanted to come back for that, she'd have to go and appeal it to the zoning board. If she wanted to change what she had presented to HPC, or what HPC had agreed to, which was fill in the sides and center the door, then HPC could look at that as an amendment, but she couldn't go back to something that HPC had already reviewed and talked about, and they denied it, or they weren't supportive. They wanted it to be solid. They wanted it simplified. So that's the way, we had discussed with her, and she had submitted something already, so she just has to put a little more detail into it before she submits it to us and then goes to the building department.
But she agreed that it would be centered.
Yes.
Okay.
And no sidelights. And then we
Okay.
also talked about the transom are going to line up with the wood panels above it also, so it's consistent.
Okay,
I think that's clarified.
yep, great.
I think we needed to clarify that.
Thank you, thank you. So, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, that's it for resolutions. Thank you so much for waiting. I'm going to turn it over to, actually, I guess I should start with Elizabeth. She did issue a report, and if you could just do a quick summary, and then we'll hand it over. This is 254 Witherspoon Street, application of Witherspoon and Lee LLC, major site with C&D variances. So this will be going to the zoning board, and we are writing an advisory memo.
Correct.
Okay.
And as the chair and I had discussed prior to the meeting starting, is the applicant did bring a model, which is great for you to be able to see, the streetscape and the neighboring property, in addition to product information, which he had said that he would bring. So I would say after my report and after the applicant has an opportunity to present, that may be a break so they can come down and look at it, which might make a little bit more sense after hearing all the testimony.
That sounds good. Okay,
Okay, so the applicant Witherspoon and Lee LLC has filed an application for preliminary final major site plan approval with C&D variances and conditional use authorization. The property is known as 254 Witherspoon Street and further identified as Block 6907, Lot 17, in the B1 zone of the former township. And it is currently the office for Josh Zinder Associates and Design, and Mr. Zinder is the managing property owner. So the applicant does wish to develop the site to accommodate office, service, and retail by constructing a building addition, making alterations to existing building, and constructing new entrances and signage and other site improvements. This project falls within the municipal Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District and received an opinion of eligibility from the New Jersey State Office of Historic Preservation. Our office received a letter from their office dated April 14, 2025, where Kate Markopole, who is the director there, had said that they had expanded their eligibility to include parcels on both sides of Birch Avenue and Lee Avenue extending west to Bayard Lane from the current district that they had designated and called the John Street Historic District. And that really is to encompass the properties that were historically associated with black communities in Princeton. And I believe the reason they saw that is because of the application and a review letter that came through for the Princeton Nursery School. So they had seen Weiss Preservation's report, and that's how they were able to expand it. The Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District is classified as Type 2, as we all know, is subject to preservation plan review from any changes visible from the public right-of-way, and its visible parameters also include painting or adding other surface coloring to an unpainted surface or adding pre-primed and pre-finished material. Presently, the property, the Witherspoon Street from Wiggins to Paul Robeson Street is a mix of residential, business, and institutional uses, but the historic neighborhood character is best represented on the west side of the street. And this property, as mentioned, is currently used for office. Again, the Board of Jurisdiction is the zoning board, and HPC will have a memo issued to them during their meeting time. And a little history on the property, and just to say that the applicant did an excellent job of representing the history of this property from before it was developed until current. So I'm just going to give a quick summary because I'm sure that he'll also touch on this. So this house was built in 1920 in the colonial revival style. It's a rectangular 2.5-story building with a raised foundation, stucco exterior wall, and a gable roof. The front facade is 3-bay symmetrical, and the fenestrations align between the floors. There are paired double-hung windows on each side of the center front door and centered single double-hung window above on the second floor. There are small paired shed dormer windows and a small centered single dormer window, which is aligned from the floors below. There is an almost full-width centered covered porch with a hip roof, and centered wood stairs lead up to the porch with evenly spaced square Tuscan columns and simple balustrades on either side of the porch stairs. On the south elevation, there are 2 windows on each floor, above 2 basement windows and a small center gable and unit, but these windows do not align on this side. The north facade has 3 windows on each floor and a shallow flat-roofed 2-story wing with a first-floor window that partially extends across to the rear, and also on this side are basement windows. So Hunter Research is the firm that performed a historic research on the property. That report was within your package that's dated September 9, 2024, and it really talks about Anita V. Webb Taylor, who was born in 1868 in Baltimore, Maryland. Her dad was a music professor, and her mom was a prominent leader in the Black church and social organization. She married Alexander Taylor, and together they had 9 children. Before moving to Princeton, they lived with her aunts in Annapolis, Maryland, and Philadelphia. Her aunt, Anita Johnson, was married to Jimmy Collins Johnson, who was born and enslaved, who later worked as a snack vendor and entrepreneur at Princeton University. He came to Princeton escaping slavery in Maryland, and under the Fugitive Slave Act, he was found and convicted. But a Princeton woman purchased his freedom after the trial, preventing his return to slavery. And after his emancipation, Johnson transferred from a janitorial job to becoming a vendor on the campus, and that's how his career began there. And he had brought Anita Taylor's 10-year-old son with him to work, and from his time with him, he later in life began to work at the university with similar work. Anita worked as a laundress for Francis Landy Patton, who's the president of Princeton Theological Seminary at the time and a former president of Princeton University, and his family. And all of her children, her older children, were employed either as a porter or laborer, service of housekeeping duties, and the younger children attended the Black Public School at Quarry and John Street. And I know that Elric has a lot of information about this because Hunter Research references the Recollector. So I'm not going to take his thunder away. But what Hunter report does say is because of significance, they always considered this a family property. And when she passed away, she passed it along to her daughter, and then she had asked her daughter to guarantee that her daughter would receive the house afterwards. And from family member to family member, there was always someone who had lived there, and they always called it the family house and property. But eventually, they all died. And the house was sold in 1993. And it was purchased by Van Ottinger, who was a local hairstylist and a salon business owner. And after that, it was sold a couple more times until 2020, I believe, is when it was purchased by Witherspoon and Lee LLC, which was used for Josh's office. So I think that it is right, as Hunter had mentioned, that this house be referred to as Anita V. Taylor House because she had purchased the land, she had built the house on it, her family for generations had lived there, and I think that's the best representation for that property. So as far as the existing conditions go, the subject property is a corner parcel which is comprised of 0.224 acres and is located on the northwest corner of Witherspoon Street and Lee Avenue. The building on the property is situated on the north side of the property south side facing Witherspoon Street. An asphalt driveway is aligned along the side of the house and the side property, and which travels to the back of the building where parking is provided. And the applicant's driveway and shares the driveway cut with the adjacent property owner at Lot 56. The topography is fairly gentle, except along the property right-of-way, where it is steep, and you can see that by the steps that go from the public sidewalk to the front porch, and where the trees are, the hedges are lined along Witherspoon and Lee Avenue. So the applicant is proposing a two-story addition to be added to the north side of the existing house, and it's going to be connected with a hyphen. The addition will also have a full basement and a second floor with a mezzanine area. The hyphen is going to be 2.5 stories, and it'll have recessed glass construction, which is intended as a sensitive transition between the historic house and the larger addition. The applicant indicates the hyphen is purposely designed to maintain the read of the existing building and the roof features. The hyphen will be constructed on the exterior wall of the existing building, so there will be no demolition required. The only changes to the exterior of the building is the connection from each floor into the hyphen. Existing windows will be converted into doors, and the hyphen will have a staircase. The applicant also further states in their application that because of the crossroads of different zoning districts, that this was taken into consideration, and they looked at various neighboring types of buildings when coming up with a design for their addition. So the application is designed to accommodate 3 tenants, one which will be Josh Zinder Associates and Design, their office, and it's going to occupy the majority of the building space, which is going to include the first floor of the new addition and the entire second floor, the mezzanine, and the attic space in the existing and proposed building addition. The second use is for a future mercantile use, and that tenant will occupy the existing first floor of the building. And the third would be a future laundromat tenant who will occupy the basement of the building addition. And the applicant expects this service for these residents in the town who will be using this will not be dependent on automobiles. And the applicant indicated they received a signed contract of intent for this use. There's a list of product details, and I'm going to just kind of touch on it. We've got an existing slate roof on the existing building, which they're asking to replace with a synthetic slate roof. The porch stairs are proposed to be moved, relocated to the south to make room for their handicap accessible ramp on the steep slope up to the existing building and the new entrance to the addition. They are going to put a new coating on the exterior wall of the stucco building, and they're going to replace the existing railing along the whole porch with an in-kind 42-inch railing, and that'll be painted white. The new addition will have wood-like canopies on the first floor and the upper floor. They will have a standing seam metal roof without ribs. They'll have windows, which will be the Weather Shield Signature Series. That will be wood-clad, and that will be painted or have a black finish. And the types of windows are double-hung, twin-double-hung, special-shape windows, fixed windows of variety of sizes, fixed twin windows, which are going to be also for the hyphen and the mezzanine on the east and north elevation of the upper part of that building. And again, that's going to be demonstrated very well on the model that you see down here. They will have wood-look soffit panels. They'll have exterior cladding, which is going to be hardy plank, the fiber cement lap siding, and stucco. They will have elevation thin brick veneer, which is going to be on the face of the building and the plaza area for that, or the plaza wall for the laundromat. They will have cable guardrails, aluminum and glass entry doors, and solar panels, and a green roof. They also propose to have a geothermal heat exchange system, which will be working to supplement the air conditioning for the existing and proposed addition, but that will be in the basement of the existing building. They also propose 3 types of signs. One is going to be for the basement tenant. That will be a pin-mounted halo-lit channel letters. The other ones would be similar halo-lit channel letters pin-mounted. That's going to be on the first floor for Josh's office, and the third one will be the future mercantile on the first floor of the existing building, and that is intended to replace the sign that currently exists there in the same location and similar size. They are proposing 3 types of light fixtures. There'll be one parking lot fixture, which is a pole-mounted. They have single wall sconces. There'll be 2 of them, one by the basement tenant entrance and one on the east side, which I believe is probably an exit door to Lee Avenue. And then they have path lighting. They'll have 16 of those, which are going to be single LED path lights at 2400 Kelvin. Other site improvements include removing, as we talked about, the existing stair that's near the right-of-way to be able to construct the ADA ramp. And that existing, that ramp will have integrated illuminated LED handrails, and the railings will be tube railings and posts will be aluminum. They'll have unilock patio pavers, which are going to be by that plaza area by the laundromat. They'll have modular block retaining walls. They'll have a new board-on-board dumpster enclosure, which is to be installed in the southwest corner of the building. New planter bench at the basement plaza area, and the parking lot will be reconfigured to reduce the existing parking, which currently has 9 to 6. The 6 parking spaces will include 1 accessible parking space, 2 EV station spaces, 2 EV-ready spaces, and 1 parking space which sits actually on the property line between their property and their neighbors, and that is supposed to be a shared scheduled parking agreement, which the applicant, I assume, will talk about. Currently, Jarcinder Associates and Design, they rent spaces from Avalon Parking, and they indicate that they will continue to do so for their employees. And they also do propose bicycle rack and storage on the site. So again, we have the standards that historic preservation reviews as far as the criteria for preservation plan review, and I'm just going to go to the comments. So I have to say that I was very impressed by the historic research that was performed by Hunter Research. They did an excellent job providing the information. It was very appropriate and telling about the history of this property, which, you know, we didn't even have this from Weiss Preservation. So this was really great to be able to have this in our resources. The building mass of the addition facing Witherspoon Street is comparable in size to the existing house, and it is not taller to that either. The windows on the addition are relatable, as is the porch. The construction of the glass hyphen helps to reduce the building mass from Witherspoon Street by making the building appear as 2 separate buildings, because it is transparent instead of it looking like one large addition added onto the existing house. So that seems to work very well. However, the building addition is twice the size as the existing house, and because of its placement on the property, its mass is hard to be minimized when you review from Lee Avenue. And often this can be done if it's behind an existing house or on the side of one and set back. But this is pretty close to the right-of-way, and it's a larger size, so that's hard to, not recognize. The applicant is asked if they had considered investigating placing the addition, as talked about, behind the building or on the side to break up that mass. And in light of Hunter's research, it does seem appropriate that there should be some open space maybe there on the corner to make it feel like it, that it's perched on that property as it once was. The relocation of the porch stairs, and I mean, it's understandable why you're trying to provide the AD access, but the building really is very symmetrical, and when you change that porch access, it does impact that symmetry. The switchback ramp now occupies the whole front yard, and we were wondering if there's a way, or have you investigated alternate access points for that. The zoning schedule indicates that the roof, even though it's a variance, that the roof height is not any taller than the ridge of the existing gable roof. However, the solar panels, because they're a little bit more than 2 feet high because of its 15-degree angle, it just appears higher, but mostly on the north and south side because that's the way they're facing. It's recommended that all LED lighting be 2700 Kelvin. The wall sconces call for 3000, and there is a little inconsistency between the path lighting where one calls out for 2700 and one calls for 3000. So consistency of that on the drawings would be appreciated. I didn't find a landscape plan within the set. I looked in both the engineer set and the architect set, but on the architect's cover sheet, it did show that there was landscaping, but it might have just been an illustration. But that might be helpful to be able to submit that, because I think that would also support the application itself. And all utilities, again, new ones should be installed underground. Number 11 addresses things for the applicant to talk about, and I'm just going to go to the end, which talks about commission's consideration. So, as always, the applicant is asked to review the project to ensure that it's appropriate, that it only has minimal degradation to the historic building on the property, the streetscape, and the historic district, and it also meets the Secretary of Interior standards. Again, consider the appropriateness of the addition, the size, the mass, height, and placement on the property and its relationship to other historic buildings and the streetscape. The building should be sympathetic, appropriately proportioned, and compatible with other buildings within the nearby property and the neighborhood. And as a corner property within Type 2, it's always challenging because the visibility is so much more. So, and also, the HPC is also asked to think about the variances and design waivers requested and how that impacts historic preservation plan. And again, the applicant is asking to replace the existing slate roof. Obviously, slate is still available, so HPC has to determine if they find it appropriate to be able to accept an alternative or if they're going to request them to use slate. Solar panels, again, as discussed, these are very visible. HPC always review them as a case-by-case basis. So again, I believe the HPC will still follow that same course. The applicant is seeking 9 variances and 2 design waivers and a conditional use. The conditional use, I believe, is because there is parking that's not on the site. Is that correct, Mr. DeGrazia?
Yeah, it's the shared parking spot between, we'll show it in
Yeah,
the presentation.
where it straddles it?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so,
that's the
okay.
conditional
And most of these variances, there is a D variance, the reason that's going to the zoning board, which is the floor area ratio. Many of these variances have to do with the building, the landscape, FAR is obviously the building, the buffering, and the parking. So really, I think that the applicant did really an excellent job, especially with historic research, and a really good faith effort in trying to retain and honor as much of the historic building and the features as possible. He did a lot of research within the neighborhood to look at other styles, other proportions, other material. He looked at the zoning, conflicts and, how that's impacted. I believe that the hyphen really worked well, but that was really only from Witherspoon Street. So as everyone knows here, Witherspoon Street is a different streetscape than Lee. All the side streets are much more residential. Witherspoon Street is more of a mix. And I think that what was done for the majority on Witherspoon, really helped to minimize the impact and allow the building to be different, but still relatable. But Lee Avenue is a little bit different because the addition is actually right in front of the historic building. So the building is no longer seen from Lee. So that becomes a problem. In addition, now it's very close to the right-of-way at a larger scale, and understanding there is a lot of glazing there, which helps it. But I think that those are things that should be considered. And HPC has never shied away from supporting variances. HPC always feels that if there's a variance needed to make a design better, they're all on board for that. However, I think that the site is a bit overdeveloped because there's a variance for landscape buffers, there's a variance for the parking design, the aisle width. I think that you've also reduced the parking stall, which isn't bad. I think you went from 9 to 8 feet width, which is, I think that you're calling it a compact, but it's actually just kind of a little smaller than the regular standard size. But I think that those all trigger a thought that maybe, there isn't, and this is a pretty big lot for this neighborhood, it's almost a quarter acre. So it just seems that it's tight. I think that some of these variances, I would question it, because I feel like if it was a little bit smaller, it didn't have to cut into reducing the landscape buffer, which we always want to have some protection from the adjoining neighbors, and to, beautify the streetscape. So that's the point that I want to make about that. And I think that that's it. I do want to say that for two things. One, I do support Hunter's research saying that this should be referenced as the Annette V. Taylor House. I think that's very appropriate. And the other thing is, I think that Josh had it right with trying to get a laundromat in this area. This has been a conversation for a long time. A lot of the residents in this area, you used to see them riding their bicycle with their laundry, trying to go to the shopping center. And I think that this would be such a great benefit for people in this neighborhood. We can talk about that entranceway, how appropriate that is, but I think the use is very, very appropriate for this neighborhood. So I'm available for any questions that the HPC might have.
Okay, any questions for Elizabeth? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Josh and Christopher, and I think they have a presentation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the detailed intro. As Chair mentioned, we have a very detailed presentation, so I'm not going to take much time. I just want to mention that, looking at this project, I find that one of the special things about it is that the principals and the tenant, Josh Zinder Architects and Design, have been basically members of the community for a long time. So they either live or work in the community or in the surrounding community, but and because of that, it's not like a developer coming from outside of town. They've been very sensitive and put a lot of effort into this design. I think it'll come out in the presentation that we have for you. Some of the elements were already mentioned, like the Hunter report and how much detail and time had gone into that report. But the focus has always been the preservation of the building itself. And we've looked at it, like Elizabeth mentioned, with the hyphen, separating the new improvements from the original so we could preserve and keep intact that and protect the very unique structure that has a great history. And part of it is also keeping that and honoring that. I know Josh has some ideas for a plaque to kind of preserve it. And this is a very nice way to balance a lot of different interests: preservation, accessibility, sustainability, community needs. And these are all elements that come from being part of the community, understanding what the community needs. So I really think you'll see how much effort and how sensitive this approach has been. And it's been something that has been worked on. It seems like a very many years, even though you only, it seems like a very long time. So with that, I'd like to introduce Josh Zinder, licensed architect, and also the current tenant of that space.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Ed, do you want to swear in anybody or no?
Chris and I talked about that. This is just a review and a report. So
Okay.
We can just let everybody explain what it is.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hello, thanks for having us this, yeah, there you go. Hello, thanks for having us this afternoon. I'm Joshua Zinder, as I think most of you know me already. I'm the managing partner of Joshua Zinder Architecture and Design, and I'm also one of the owners of Witherspoon & Lee LLC, manager there, and I happen to live about 3 blocks away from this property on Moore Street. Here you see, and we're going to go through a lot in the presentation. I think we addressed most of the stuff from Elizabeth's report. Certainly, if we miss something, at the end, we can address that.
And I know Elizabeth stays up very late because we get her reports about 2 a.m.
2 a.m.
So we've attempted to address all the questions, all the responses. We may need to, provide some testimony on some of the others with that, given the, the nature of the report.
So here you see the existing colonial revival structure at 254 Witherspoon in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood and historic district. And it's currently occupied, as was mentioned by our office, JZAD. The focus of the project is to maximize the utility of the property, to contribute to the well-being of the neighborhood, maintain the historic asset, the Annetta V. Taylor House, provide community support elements, provide universal accessibility to the building uses, create a model for sustainability within our community and this specific neighborhood, and create a highly contextual structure utilizing the form, scale, and materiality of the neighborhood. Here you see the Sanborn map from 1875 without the structure, and in 1927, which is the first time that the structure shows up on the Sanborn maps. The property has an interesting history. It was originally part of the Lee estate and functioned as farmland. In 1922, the property was purchased by Annetta V. Taylor, who built the 6-bedroom house sometime between 1923 and 1926. For a working-class black woman to build a home during this period on a prominent street in Princeton is quite remarkable. And we want to maintain that legacy. Her history and that of her family is really quite fascinating, some of which you can see in the historic report we submitted from Hunter Research. In 1993, the family sold the house and it exchanged hands a number of times. In 2016, it was included as part of the Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District as a contributing structure. Our office has occupied this property for the last 4.5, almost 5 years now. Here you see the property on a location map along Witherspoon Street and Lee Avenue. This map I'm sure you're all familiar with. It's the town's Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District map, and we've highlighted the location of the project within it. Here you can see, in the context of town, a short walk to the central business district. Of note, it is this property from this property, it is a 28-minute walk and a 7-minute bike ride to the only laundromat in town at the Princeton Shopping Center. When we moved into the building, I sat on the porch day after day watching individuals with bags of laundry walking or riding to the shopping center from the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood. Recently, we composed a survey of the neighborhood to better understand the need. Our surveys were distributed electronically by community members, and they were posted around the neighborhood and in some of the local shops. Most respondents were married, Spanish speakers. Most were women and had children. Some of the information we learned was that 53% of respondents used a laundromat for their sole source of laundry. Another 29% used shared laundry equipment in their building, and the remaining percentage used laundry in their home. 76% of respondents used the Princeton Shopping Center laundromat, and you can often see them on sunny days, rainy, and snowy days alike, walking and riding with their laundry across town. Further, in asking if we had a laundromat at our location, 79% said they would use the laundromat at this location, and all but 8% would walk, take the bike, or ride public transit. Here you see the building as it currently exists with a slight yellow hue in the stucco. And we do actually have sections of the building that you can clearly see what's closer to the original color because they've been on the north side and protected by structure, and they're in shade. You can see here the existing Witherspoon streetscape and with the proposed structure in the context of the streetscape. The buildings across the street are dotted in red on the elevations, so you can see the scale change. Here is the Lee Avenue streetscape, and you can see the contextual void at the end of the block. And actually, when you're on Lee looking towards our structure, it's actually very difficult to actually see the structure because of the hedges that surround the periphery of the project. With the larger 4.5 story, and then you also can see the larger 4.5 story Avalon Bay Apartments looming large next door. Looking at the Lee Avenue streetscape, it's important to note the repeated gable roofs that run along Lee. We pull this element into our design and into the building. Here's a diagram of the property with the existing building. This diagram series that we're going to go into will illustrate how we break down the scale of the building and its smaller components. Here you see the glass hyphen connector, which Elizabeth had previously mentioned. Now, the grade change along Witherspoon Street puts the corner elevation at the same level as our current basement. This would allow access from the street directly into the building at this level, which is what we're taking advantage of. It's actually roughly 9.5 feet from our first floor to that corner sidewalk. We then add 2 contextually scaled forms to that basement level, a gabled roof element, which picks up on the Lee Avenue roofline context, and a simple rectilinear form which picks up on the adjacent Witherspoon Street buildings. Connecting these elements, we have our studio space tying it all together. And the studio is stepped back, not just from the lower basement level, but also from those contextual elements. After early discussions in this process with Elizabeth Kim, we decided to pull back the solid facade that we had and open up the front with the glass, effectively pulling back the curtain of the facade to allow for a clearer view of the historic structure. Here you see the entire massing of the building. Now, we did look at other options for the site, including take advantage of the affordable AH07 overlay, looking at mixed-use office retail solution for the site, which in the end we did not pursue. The challenge was for us to have apartments. It meant that we had to have them on the lower levels, and we were not permitted to have office up on top of apartment space. But as a project, it was viable in the overlay if we didn't include our office. This solution was a 10-unit apartment structure above the retail and service space, which was compliant to the affordable overlay. In looking at that comparison with our design is substantially smaller than the potential 3.5-story housing solution. In the overlay, there is no front setback, which would allow the construction to extend to the sidewalk of Lee. Here you see the existing site plan. And with our proposal for the site, you can see the open space plaza that we are creating at the corner of Witherspoon and Lee. Looking at the new site, you can see our proposed shared parking spot and combined drive, which is considered to be impervious coverage in its current gravel state. And we have an LOI with our neighbor so that we have a plan for sharing this spot. You can also see the sloped surfaces, which will provide accessible entry to all tenancies. You can see the green buffers. Please note the area where the cars are parked on this lot will be porous pavement. As I mentioned, we have a signed LOI with the neighbor allowing us to use the parking spot during the day, and they will use the spot at night. And that straddles the property line, which is why we needed one of those
Conditional
variances.
use.
Conditional uses, excuse me, yeah. The basement level of the building will be a laundromat. We currently have an LOI for a tenant to take occupancy when the building is completed. We also have 2 backup potential tenants who are interested in the space if the first one backs out of the LOI. So we are committed to this use for this site. Here you see the first floor with the future tenant and the first floor of our new office. One thing to note is the new stair in the existing structure. You can see it in the back. There are 2 doors side by side. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor or not, but it's right
Yes.
there. Okay. When we moved in, We removed a non-code compliant stair in this location as it was too steep, and the fire inspector is requesting that we add the stair back in, and as a result, to make it code compliant, we will need to add a new door into the back of the building. Here's the second floor, which is part of our studio space. The top half story of the existing attic space, and the new mezzanine, which will also be used by our office. Here you see the roof plan with the green roofs, solar panels, new synthetic slate, and the metal roof. In looking at the elevation of Witherspoon Street and Lee Avenue, it is important to note that the slope surface that we are creating at the front of our building for an accessible entry is not a ramp. It is pitched at less than a 1:20 slope and will thereby not need handrails. This is critical for exposing the front of the building. We certainly don't want to have handrails in the front of the building. We want to be able to preserve the view of the front of the historic building. Also, the door from the laundromat on Lee is only for emergency egress. It's required for the square footage by code. Here you see the secondary elevations that face the back of the property. Looking at the materials used on this project, we started with the stucco on the existing building, which we intend to repaint to be closer to the original yellow. We have some samples here as well for that. We bring that stucco material over to the box form on the corner. However, the stucco material will be white in lieu of yellow on the new structure. We're doing this to differentiate and separate the new structure from the old. The existing slate on the building will be replaced by synthetic slate, as the existing slate is too heavy for the structure and needs to be replaced as it is also failing. We spent considerable time considering our material options here. The roof cannot be repaired in its current state. It needs to be replaced in its entirety. It reached that state well before we purchased the property with roof leaks and falling slate pieces, some of which we have here for you to look at as well. We considered replacing the slate with asphalt shingles, which has been approved in this neighborhood in the past. However, we feel the visual representation of the synthetic material closely matches the actual slate, and we think that the passerby would be hard-pressed to determine that it's actually artificial. The synthetic slate is more expensive than the asphalt, but it is considerably less than the cost of slate. We bring that synthetic slate material over to the new structure, wrapping on our studio, and then this is done specifically to connect it to the roof element on the existing building and help reduce the scale as well. Looking at the clapboard siding on the Lee Avenue houses, we bring that over to cover the gabled roof portion of our building. We looked at the brick at our neighbor on Witherspoon Street and brought that into the basement level of our building. And here you see all of the materials brought together. And again, we do have the samples here for you to look at in a little bit. One of the elements that the Secretary of Interior Standards for Historic Places calls out when adding to historic structures is the use of a hyphen connector, a glass separator to define the buildings clearly as historic versus new structure that is of today. Here you see that connector in place, so you see that this connector allows us to make the buildings into two distinct structures and at the same time take advantage of sharing the space. As I mentioned, we hope to make the structure a model for sustainability. We hope to be net zero energy, incorporating a green roof, geothermal heating and cooling, solar panels, porous pavement, bicycle parking, EV charging, and all of the lighting will be LED. We recognize that we need to color correct all of the lighting so that they're all the same color. One of the concerns of these sustainability goals would be the view of the solar panels. We have set the solar panels back on the roof so they will not be seen from Lee Avenue. To clarify, the panels are angled south as shown on the drawings. I think that was a question in the report. And across the street on Witherspoon Street, these panels will be out of view. Another concern from a historic point of view is how we will be maintaining and preserving the existing structure. As mentioned, we will be using synthetic slate to maintain the visual reference of the roof, of the historic slate, and the stucco will be recoated to maintain its longevity. The only windows that we are removing are the 3 basement windows, which you can see down here. These 3 basement windows, as they're going to be up against the connector. In blue, you can see the ground floor windows, which we will be blocking up. However, the original frames will be maintained here, and at some time in the future, they could certainly be reopened. On the 2 upper floors, the windows in green will have their sills removed to convert these to doors, while we will be maintaining the window frames and connecting them back to the ground. The other windows on this wall we intend to keep, which will allow transfer light in from the glass hyphen. At the rear of the building, here, you can see the new door to the new egress stair, which is required by the fire inspector. It is our hope to replace the remaining windows on the building in the future. They are shown in yellow on this drawing. These windows were previously replaced by one of the last owners, and they're vinyl windows. We hope to change them to wood-clad windows, which more directly connect to what the original windows would have been. And then just as a reference, we took the typical window. So here you see what the typical original window dimensions and original windows with the glazed opening of 2 foot 3 1/4 inches would have been. The existing windows have a glazed opening of 2 feet and 1/2 inch, which is 3 1/4 inches smaller than the original. The only difference between the original windows and the windows which we want to replace them with will be the meeting rail, which will need to be a 1/2 inch bigger in order to hold the insulated glass unit. These are actually windows that this commission has approved on our projects in the past. The proposed replacements will match the original glazing opening of 2 foot 3 1/4. So you can see it is larger than the reduced opening of the vinyl windows that are currently in place. We looked carefully at the question of the corner lawn and whether it was done with intent or out of necessity due to when it was built and if it is a defining feature of the historic district. First, if we look at the divisions of the lots along Lee, we would be able to divide the lot into 3 lots to fit into that vernacular lot size. If we were able to take the zoning of the B1 zone as it is, then 2 lots would be viable to divide them into. Finally, when doing our geological investigation of the property, we discovered a large rock outcropping under the lawn on this half of the site, which would have made construction on this part of the lot difficult and costly in the 1920s. The location that was selected for the original home was clearly a result of this rock outcropping. Placing a structure on the corner would have been more contextual, appropriately characteristic for the era, and viable for the original use. This would have provided a protected lawn instead of one on the corner. It would also have set up the ability to subdivide and add another structure in the future. If it were not for the rock, we believe the house would have been constructed on the corner. We do not see the lawn being a defining feature of this property or the district, but we rather see it as a happenstance that was more cost-effective solution rather than intent and a defining feature of this original design. We'll go through the requested variances to help provide some clarity and also answer some of the questions in the report. So the existing building is 30 feet 9 inches and compliant with the current zoning. The new building will match the height of the existing structure. And this is a variance, as a result of us accessing the sidewalk corner. By doing that, we lower the average grade around the lot. The difference is approximately 12 inches. The datum of the building height on the street is still maintained. Next, we have the FAR variance. This variance is in large part the result of the porches that we are including in the design. The porches are contextual and fit well into the neighborhood. And are actually, the porches are not part of the enclosed space, so that's included in the FAR. The next two variances are a result of this property being the first property in the township, which does not exist anymore, by the way. The township does not exist anymore. And the fact that it abuts 4 different zones, and that 2 of these zones are residential when it is actually in the business zone. Due to these issues, the existing house is entirely, due to these issues, the existing house is entirely in the required landscape buffer. So you couldn't actually build the existing structure on this lot as it is today. The buildable area where we are proposing our new structure would be permitted. If we were to be in the business zone in the borough instead of the township, where there is no requirement for a landscape buffer, and the RB zone is just a block away, they would have these setbacks and these setback requirements, which would allow for the entire structure. The landscape buffer allows for even more space, but this is actually the buildable area. With regard to the driveway variance, the driveway width is really an existing condition. Our neighbor's driveway and ours are connected with a gravel separator, which is already considered impervious coverage. Both of us drive over this separator often to maneuver in the lot, and which is why we've signed that LOI. It will allow space for both of us to have better maneuvering in the parking area and the drive, in addition to the shared parking spot, which we previously showed. The parking variance. Please note that most of our staff parks in the parking garage across the street, which has hundreds, hear that, hundreds of available spaces. The required parking indicates 53 spaces for our use in the B1 zone. We are providing 10. This zone was in large part, the B1 zone was in large part designed to be for businesses at the periphery of town like 206, which would necessitate the use of a car. Our uses for all 3 of the uses we have intended in the building are community-oriented and will have many pedestrian users. If you look at comparable zoning in the town, the RB zone down the street, we would be required to have 17 spaces, which would be a partial variance of only 7, when most of our staff will be parking at the lot across the street. If we were to use the affordable overlay and have those 10 apartments that I previously showed, and the laundromat and the retail, we would be required to have 5 spaces without any EV. So our solution would effectively be compliant with being in the overlay. The signage variance. We plan to have 3 facade signs for 3 different occupants. So each of us would have our own sign. We would not have a pylon sign or a projecting sign or freestanding signs on the building, all of which, on the property or on the building, all of which are permitted. We believe this is the best low-impact solution for signage on Witherspoon Street. The signage will be halo lit, so as not to spread the light out, but rather just highlight the edges of the signs. The front yard setback, the wall variance. As we mentioned before, we will be having accessible path that does not require railings and is not a ramp. And I'll just say, regretfully, we could not get the slope surface to align with the center of the facade. We really tried. If we did, it would have required us to have a steeper pitch on the slope surface and to add those railings. And so, it was something that I held on to for a very long time, and in the end, we made the decision to center the stairs on the last bay and take it off of center.
Just for clarity, the existing building does not have accessibility access, and this design is creating it for all 3 spaces in a way that's both inviting and, non-discriminatory. It's not hidden anywhere. It's, front door, here you are.
Excuse me. The challenge that is with this particular variance is the landing at the top of this slope surface at the first floor. It requires support and it requires a wall. It is this wall that is within the setback. We are leveraging this space that we are building a wall around to support our sustainability goals by providing covered bike storage at this location for visitors. We have separate bike storage for our staff in the back of the building and open bike storage adjacent to the building as well. But since we were building this, this landing for the pitched surface, we figured we'd take advantage of what's underneath it by adding bike storage there.
Josh, could you point to what landing you're talking about?
Yeah, so it's this landing here. And in the 3D image, you see it's this wall here and this landing, and you see this sort of shadowed area that's tucked in. So there'll be bike storage in there, and the bike racks will be black so that they disappear into the shadow.
Thank you.
Here you see the site from above as it currently exists, and with the new addition. Here you see the existing site looking down Witherspoon Street, and with the new addition. Here you see the building from across the street, and with the new addition. Here we show it with the existing structure as opposed to a rendered version of it, but please note that when the project is finished, we will no longer need the window AC units, so that'll also help clean up the original structure. You can see here also the historic plaque that we intend to install to acknowledge the history of the Taylor family and of their building. We're also looking for help and guidance if anyone has any images or connections to the Taylor family that we can include with that plaque. Here you see the site looking down Lee Avenue, and with the new addition. You can see the gabled roof form on the addition and the studio as it steps back from the street, and you can see that it picks up on the gabled roof form of the neighbors, and certainly the view looking down Lee Street, it appears to be just one additional building. You can also see the raised garden walls that run down Lee. Most of the front of the properties along Lee have a concrete block or some type of raised garden wall, which we end up extending along the side of the laundromat. As mentioned earlier, we engaged Hunter Research to do a detailed historic report on the property and look at our proposal. A copy of this report and their conclusions were provided to you. In looking at the design approach, we believe this project is consistent with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic places. With regard to the existing structure, we remove no distinctive features from the contributing structure. We are replacing the roof and repairing and painting the stucco and the rotted wood trim and the porch elements matching the existing conditions. So we're going to be repairing all of that. We plan to replace the windows to match the original windows in the future. We will be acknowledging Annetta V. Taylor and family and the history of the Colonial Revival building with a plaque on the property. With regard to the addition, the glass hyphen separates the addition from the contributing structure. The materials used are sympathetic to the existing building and context. The massing of the building echoes its surrounding context without creating a false sense of history. Finally, if the addition were to be removed in the future, the original structure can easily be restored. We believe this proposal will promote community-oriented tenants in the laundromat, our office, and a future occupant as well. The addition fits well and is respectful of the Witherspoon-Jackson Historic District and complies with the Secretary of Interior standards for historic places. The height, proportion, solid void relationships, and scale of the proposed addition are all visually compatible with the existing structure and neighborhood. The relationship of materials, texture, and color of the facades and roof are also visually compatible with the historic district and enrich the visual landscape. It does not adversely affect the character or appearance of the district or the relationships among the structures. It does not adversely affect the exterior architectural features or character of the contributing structure or the neighborhood. History does not stop. We are continually making it. The buildings in town reflect that history and are markers for how things change. Our town's landscape is a quilt of that history. We strive in all the projects we do to be sensitive and respectful of that history, the neighborhood, and the town. The project is appropriate to the scale, materiality, and site, and is respectful of the past while not creating a false sense of history. In conclusion, we believe the project to be sensitive to the historic character of the contributing structure, will support the well-being of the neighborhood and historic district. It promotes the conservation of a contributing structure within our historic district, has sustainable practices and resources incorporating the best features of design to create a desirable visual landscape through creative development techniques. Thank you for your time. We hope you find our proposal compelling and recommend approval to the zoning board. We have samples and the model down here if you want to look at it. And thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think this is a perfect time for us to go look at the model before we go into our question and debate. So if everyone wants to take 5 or 10 minutes just to go around the table and look at the samples, and everyone from the public, everybody, so we can all get a 3D view of it. I think it's a great time to do that. Thanks. All right, let's get back to business. Just want to say how much we appreciate the 3D model, the materials, all the presentation materials. We don't usually get this much stuff, so we really appreciate that. All right, let's go through. Elizabeth, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Josh a few questions about his presentation. So you talked about the lighting along the non-ramp, okay? Which is great, because I was concerned, there's a detail in the set. One of them that shows the path lighting, which is like 16 of them along there, and there's a number, and then there's another one that talks about that integrated LED railing, which I assume, and it looked like it was going to be both. So you're saying that path railing is no longer there? What about the integrated?
No, so the railing is at the stairs. So where we have the 2 stairs that go up.
Oh, because you don't have the railing along there,
Right.
okay.
But along there, it'll just be a very low landscape light. So it's just providing enough illumination for the ramp. It's not going to have greater illumination.
Oh, okay,
For the
so,
sloped surface, I should say.
so how high is that? Like, it's 12, 15? Like, okay, like maybe 18.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So that'll be along the path, but,
And that's also in the landscape too, so it's not, so
I
I'm not sure
understand.
why you didn't get the landscape
Yeah,
plan, but
I
we
don't,
had
do you
submitted
have a,
it.
because I
Yeah, it was
looked.
submitted. I mean, we can pull it up if you want.
Yeah, because I said, you know, it seemed like you'd have it.
Just loading.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I don't have that. Was that part of, that's your set?
That's part of what
Yeah.
we submitted.
Yep, no, it's, I mean, but it's your drawings, it's not your engineers,
Well,
because sometimes
actually,
it's,
we have, is it Arnold?
oh, Arnold,
Arnold is doing our landscape.
oh, okay, I saw that in one of your correspondence, but I never saw, did it come as a separate sheet? Or was it included in the set?
Part of the set.
It was typically tacked on to the back of the
Okay, what about with this?
Yeah, it should be in
Should be in there.
I didn't see it, yeah, I mean, I kept on
Might be
looking,
black
looking.
and white in there.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why there was no comment about it, because I didn't see it. So that's good. I'll have to look at it and maybe amend the report before it goes to zoning. The other thing is that, I know that you talked about parking requirements, whether it was borough or township, and if you had used the ADU, that you would have gotten a credit. I mean, obviously, that's because they want to encourage the ADU for credit, but I understand. I mean, you know, I understand, you know, the comparison you're making.
All right, I want to open this up to the commission members. I guess I can start with Charlotte. Did you want to make any comments?
Yeah, well, thank you for your incredible thoroughness and the documentation and the historical research, and it's all wonderful. I had a couple questions about the fenestration pattern on the addition.
I'm sorry, can you,
Oh,
can
sorry.
everyone hear Charlotte? She might have to get the mic going.
Sorry. I was just looking at the fenestration pattern on the addition, which I thought looked great, and I just wondered about, you chose double hung without mullions, right? And, I mean, there's no divisions in the,
Right, you're talking about, on the existing building, there aren't.
no, I'm talking about on the new building.
Right, so I guess we thought that since the original building, we're not sure if they had them originally or if they didn't have them. The divisions in the glass, it's quite likely they did based on the age of the building. But
Right.
at some point, even on some of the older windows, you know, it was less clear if we had that. So we thought that keeping with the more modern structure, it was more appropriate to have no divisions on the windows.
Okay.
But at the same time, we did the double hung because we thought that that also fit with the existing structure.
Right. Yeah, I guess the big picture windows on the first floor, yeah, they look a little jarring to me. And then but the real fenestration is on, what do you call it, the studio space? The top floor?
Yeah, is our main studio.
That's a tough one. I mean, it's probably a lovely room inside. It's just, yeah, it's so, to me, pretty radically not in keeping with the neighborhood, and the roof overhang on that.
So interestingly enough, I'm, you know, across the street at 277 Witherspoon Street, directly across the street.
Yeah.
There's currently, the building that's there now, the structure that was torn down had a very similar roof overhang at 277 Witherspoon before it was
On
taken
the
down.
top floor, like
On
that?
the top floor.
Maybe it's good it was torn down. No,
Yeah, it was. that
yeah,
building was-
it just seems, I hate to use the word aggressive, but just the shape of it, just, you know, and profile. So that was, I'll stop there, but,
Okay, thank you. Frida, did you want to make comments?
Yeah, piggybacking on what Charlotte had said about the studio area, I think those windows are probably too small, and that's why it's so noticeable. The partitions, I think if they were wider,
Which windows?
the studio space,
Top floor.
yeah, the top floor, yeah, I think they're,
You're talking
I
about
think
the
because they're
the
so
clear story
narrow-
windows?
So, oh, no, yeah, no, you were there.
we're there, yeah.
These on the
Right.
top
Yeah,
here?
I think if they were wider, they would be
So
sort of
it
less,
had fewer mullions, you're saying?
if there were fewer, yeah, fewer.
'Cause right now they're both.
I think that would be, it would read a little more pleasant to look at. It's so noticeable, and I'm sure that's the whole point, but, but there's
Well, actually,
some,
no, it's the exact opposite. I mean, we would probably be putting in a non-glare glass on that. Our goal is for that surface to sort of disappear.
oh,
So, you know,
it doesn't disappear, it's
the-
almost the first thing you see. And then, is there any way we can look at the renderings, like kind of slowly, just so we take a look? Because I was wondering, I think from Witherspoon Street, the building looks great, it sort of fits in. But maybe from from the Lee Avenue side, I
look
would
at
love
Lee?
to see a little more. Okay, but that's from,
That's looking down Lee.
yeah, but that's not.
Is that it?
That's not like.
That's
right
existing or
across-
proposed?
No, that's proposed.
Can you go back to existing, just to so you see the difference? And then proposed. Oh, there it is.
Right, exactly, from Witherspoon Street, looking at it, that's what I'd like to see, because that'll be the biggest impact.
I mean, I guess this is probably the closest thing we
Yeah.
have to that.
Mhm, mhm. I mean, I'm just, I mean, obviously it's big, but, and then
Yes.
there, and also the overhang, it's a lot. It looks like a lot, but it probably will help you with the sun coming in. That's, practically, I think that would be that would work, but it seems like a lot, and I feel like if you could reduce it a little bit, it would read as less opposing. And then the gable roof in the back, can we, no, there's no picture, this is the best, right? Yeah, like,
there, and then you could see
I
on
have
the
the
model,
elevation.
you could
Yeah.
I can-
see there.
We can show you, I have the elevation earlier.
mm-hmm. Yeah, oh yeah, that's good. Uh-huh.
And that doesn't show the trees though, right? So those are from
Right,
there?
there's a,
you- or
well, it
you have
does
the
show,
wall?
you can just see they're sort of dotted in
Oh,
very
they are,
lightly
okay.
here. And there is actually another tree that's between these two structures.
Yeah, so you basically, from view from the street, you'll have that wall, I don't know what you call that wall,
It's
garden
a
wall?
landscape garden
Then there'll
wall.
be like dirt in the trees planted, and then the structure behind it, the levels that you see.
Yeah, and that landscape garden wall, you know, most of the homes that run down Lee have that. So effectively, we're just continuing that same element.
I mean, I think about different scenarios with that studio area. I think the black is, I don't know, it doesn't disappear at all. It makes it more noticeable.
I think also part of the challenge is that we didn't put lights in the interior of the model, so,
It's dark, yeah.
you know, during the day when the lights are on, you're going to be able to see into the studio. It's not going to be a vertical surface or wall, because it's glass.
But I think we all see those houses around town, the white houses with the black windows, and, I mean, I don't know. I feel like it would have the
I
same.
agree with you.
Yeah, but I feel like it would have the same.
Our neighbor just painted their house black, so
Yeah, I feel like it might have the same effect, even though it's high up. You know, we're looking at it, you know, straight on, but it's just a comment.
All right. Roger, did you want to?
Yeah, no, I think we're incredibly diligent, and I really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. And I was going back to the Secretary of Interior standards, and you've done a masterful job in terms of materials and distinguishing the new building from the old. But from different angles, I worry about size and proportion, especially the Witherspoon Street side. The fact that you kind of grafted a gable building onto the end of it, to me, cuts two ways. It's like, hey, it's too big, so we got to look like a gabled house, but then it sort of fits. I'm toggling back and forth between those opposite views. And this particular view, I was going to ask you to put that one up, whatever it is, page 46. The scale looks great. The overhead shot, I guess Charlotte used the word aggressive for the studio roof. From that view, it looks kind of out of place, doesn't quite fit. So it's, as with all these things, looking at a building from different angles, you're going to see different things. So I'm just sort of on the fence and ambivalent, as I often am, about the issue of scale.
All right, thanks. Shirley, did you want to say anything?
Yes, I got many of my questions answered when I was talking to Mr. Zinder, so I don't have too much to ask. But in the middle, the house in the new house, I saw one picture where there was something that extended further than the roof. Can you go, I don't know, you have to go through the pictures for me.
I'm assuming you mean in the other rendering, in this rendering?
Yeah, it looks like an extension in the middle. I just want to know what that is.
Well, there's a porch on the existing building. Is that what you're talking about?
I think it's the one where you're explaining what the height is, and it's
It shows the
Oh,
frontage,
yeah.
I
the
know,
frontage of
I-
the
right,
building.
Okay, so it's just a graphic, you're talking about?
There it
this
is. What is that?
So that is us trying to show if the buildings were separated.
Of what?
So this is the hyphen dropping in.
The hyphen's above it. Yeah, you
Yeah,
see
so
the
we-
piece
we-
above? It's sort of taken the hyphen, the glass area that connects the two, and picked it up.
It's a
Yeah,
piece of
right.
architectonic.
But it's kind of confusing, because,
drawing.
so that's just there, it's really not going to go that far, is that?
No, it's below
Yeah,
the
that's
roof.
it. Yeah,
It's below
right,
the roof
right.
line. It will look like
But that's,
This is what it looks like.
I know it
in,
now, but I
yeah.
just want to know, why did you put it there to show, what was that?
just because architects like to show things dropping into buildings.
Oh, okay.
It's
And you're not
arch-
going to change too much in Mr. Ting Taylor's house, right? Because I looked, the frontage
No,
looks
actually, we're
different.
going to try to restore it because there's a lot of rotted wood. We want to replace that.
But you're not going to change it too much, it's going to look basically like it has.
It's going to look exactly like it's been. yes.
Okay. And the other thing is that I talked with you about the signage, that if we can connect with the Witherspoon Jackson Historical and Cultural Society
We
to
would, we would,
go
we
along
would
with the
love
plaques that
to
we have.
work with the Cultural Society to ensure the content
Uh-huh.
is correct. And we'll pay for the sign to match the ones you have around town, too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Elric.
First of all, I have to tell you, I had such a good time with all the research that had gone into the location, because it just reminded me of how much I enjoyed Ting Taylor, and I got to know, it was 50 years ago this month, we published the first issue of The Recollector, and I hadn't really spent any time with it this month until today when I was reading all of that, and just delighted that I spent my 20s with people like Ting Taylor, and now I'm old as he was when I interviewed him. Anyway, he represented that neighbor. He represented so much of the history of this area. I had forgotten that his aunt, I think it was his aunt, not his mother, but anyway, that she was Jimmy Johnson's fourth wife. Jimmy Johnson was a figure in Princeton, and as I recall, and I may have this wrong, but I believe that the plantation where he was enslaved in Maryland was adjacent to the one where Frederick Douglass was, and they knew each other as when they were adolescents. The story of his coming up here, the fact that he was so well known that when he died, the students actually put up a tombstone to him. And in the meantime, Theodosia, I think her name was Theodosia Prevost, who lived down in Jugtown, she's the one who bought his freedom at that point. I mean, but Ting had, and he played on the same football team as Paul Robeson. I mean, you know, this is a landmark, if only for the fact that it is associated with this wonderful man my friend Ting Taylor. All the more reason why I'm very pleased that the house is being celebrated, in a sense. He was the one who told me about how he used to sneak across the street before the hospital was built, when it was a farm, and steal fruit out of the trees, and got caught doing it. I mean, that's how and he lived in that house all the way through when they built that gargantuan, not much loved building, the last vestiges of the old hospital there. Anyway, it pleases me that you grew up in this town too, and
I didn't grow up here.
well, but
I've been here for 25 years now.
just 25 years?
Yeah, so there was another.
Seems like yesterday.
There was another Zinder family that was in Princeton, and they moved to Florida the month that I moved into town.
We
So
can only
Oh,
handle one Zinder at a time.
Exactly.
Anyway,
There used to
I
be
think
a
that
toy store
but
on
I've
Nassau.
seen some of the buildings that for instance,
Everything you're saying.
I love what you did with Nelson Glass. And the fact that it still respects the fact that it was a glass emporium on the floor, on the ground floor. You used glass as a material sensitive to that building, and you stepped it back so that so that each floor has a sort of an outside area, and from the streetscape, you hardly notice that the whole thing has changed. But then you look up, and it's quite wonderful. And I guess that's the thing that I'm most disappointed by in this design, is that I feel like that roof line at the top is awkward, and it doesn't really respect the house particularly, or the neighborhood, and it doesn't, and I just think the massing can be improved. And here's some thoughts on that. One is that corner, the vegetation on that corner is a breath of fresh air on Witherspoon Street. It's one little gap there where there's some greenery, and the house sort of sits surrounded by landscaping. We took Bob Hilliard to task a few months ago about the way the side street projections on his plans were awkward and disrespected the side streets. I'm very pleased that you included the building to the west end of this project and kept it in scale with the house next door. I think that's really important. And I think when you were demonstrating this in terms of the various levels and the various volumes and the way they filled the lot, it just occurred to me that you could do more with that. The plinth on the bottom, I wish it could be lower, just a little bit lower, so that one little 3-bay building could sit in direct relationship to the one next door, and just have a slight grade change down into that spot. But instead of having the building directly above it, with just a little bit of a terrace area there, I wish you could pull that main section back, at least partially, to behind the kitchen section of the main house, so that it isn't directly beside the existing house. I love the hyphen, and you've actually got 2 hyphens. I like both of them. But if the main volume could be pulled back a little bit, and I keep thinking of the sort of 1950s hairdo where the hair sort of swings out like this, and that roof line bothers me. But if it was back and it was maybe 15, 20 feet further behind that building, and behind both buildings, behind the Taylor House and behind the new 3-bay, with some more landscaping in there, I think that the volumes would all sort of play against each other. There'd be some nice shadow lines during the day because of the way they're juxtaposed. And I just give that a little thought, because you've been sensitive to so many other aspects of this property, of the materials, of the neighborhood. I find that discordant, and I don't know whether Elizabeth brought this up or not. My hearing's not that great, but I wondered if the notion of an elevator had been considered instead of the ramp. Also sort of takes up so much space there that one wonders if there's a way of integrating that so that here it looks nice and green. I just feel like it's think of this as like a 100-foot long approach to the building. And does the balustrade on the existing house have to go up to 42 inches?
So we're looking into that right now, actually. We'd like it to be at a lower elevation, lower height. In part, I think this depends on the use, that because it's no longer a residence, it has to go up, which is why we document it that way. But we would actually like it to be maintained at the lower elevation, and if we can figure that out, this came up recently on another project we're working on. So our goal is, before we meet with zoning, we'll be able to clarify that and make that adjustment.
Anyway, I do like the notion of these separate volumes and treating them a little bit differently, but having some relationship among them. And I guess those are my comments.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elric. Yeah, I guess we're all looking at that top section, the studio, I guess that's what we're calling it, and wondering how can that be minimized a little bit? But we're also, I think, really appreciative of the sensitivity you've made to separate the buildings in a very elegant way and create this kind of juxtaposition where it's clearly a modern building, but it's not overtaking the historic building, except at that one place where I think we're all kind of concerned. You know, is that taking too much attention? So again, I don't know, Frida talked about it, maybe, I don't know if there's a color change, or, I don't know, what do you think?
I think I'll go to the one where we have the materials. I think that'll be probably the most useful. This one or the?
No, I think, yeah, color change would be better. Like I said before, I also think that there's just too many panes. And, you know.
So simplifying that top piece of the studio.
The other floors, you know, repeat the rhythm of the original house. The studio part changes the rhythm.
I think that in the studio part, which is avoided, is the black slate.
Well, it's a sort of a mid-tone gray slate. We're trying to match the slate that we have on the building.
And that's the shape that you end up reading so strongly, which isn't really, and then I guess the sort of purity of the house
Oh,
shape.
I think you got to get closer to your mic because you're not on the recording.
No, I was just saying that the purity of the, sort of cube shape in the pale yellow and the house shape in the pale orange, seem really contextual, but then what's going to be actually quite dark. And I feel like that's the shape that you're going to read, and it's not really, it's kind of filling in between the others. Did you try it maybe if that was clapboard also?
We tried it a whole number of ways.
Yeah.
I can tell you that actually we did this with real intent, because when we looked at clapboard, it made the building look like, a 3.5-story building, because you were sort of having that clapboard extend from the floor all the way up. And what we were trying to do here was relate this element elevationally and to a certain extent visually, because it steps back to the slate roof that's here and also down the street. And I'm sorry to have to go back to it, but I'm just going to go back to that other view that we had looking down Lee. And I think that view in particular illustrates how that upper floor, steps back, and that the angle that we have, and yes, we can probably adjust the amount of overhang on that angle coming off, but the angle on that overhang actually makes that slate element look roof-like when you look down the street like this. And it was done with intent to make that connection between that surface and the roof.
Okay. I guess there's a complexity there, but a complicatedness.
Yeah.
Not complexity, I would say not in a great way, but it's kind of looks more complicated than it maybe needs to be. But
So I have a question about the use of the artificial slate. Are there feelings one way or the other about that, rather than using actual slate?
I like it, actually. I mean, I feel like the other buildings project out a little more because that's dark and void.
Okay. Any other comments about the slate? I personally don't have a problem in this instance with the synthetic slate, because I understand how heavy actual slate is, and it's if we're interested in preserving the historic building, I don't think can carry slate adequately, you know. So, also, there's 9 variances. Your presentation was excellent in reviewing every single reason why you need variances. And I was just wondering if there are variances you feel, just to the commission, if you feel are unnecessary or can be avoided. I know zoning will be very concerned about that many variances, but this neighborhood is very difficult. So, any comments about the variances? Is there a general supporting? Yeah, Elizabeth.
Josh, could you go over the variance that has to do with the parking design? I think it has to do with the aisle width, and then the landscape buffer again. Could you just go over them again?
Oh, one point, because you said it earlier on before he gets to those questions. The parking spaces will meet the size requirement except for one. So there's only one compact space. The other ones meet the size.
Is the one that doesn't meet it the shared one?
No, I believe that one's a regular, a standard one. I think it's the one next to the handicap spot, right? Yeah, it's the one that's next to the handicap spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
So I just wanted to
basically the
clarify
one
that
that's
because-
farthest in, so more compact.
Yeah.
I mean, our existing lot is already, let's just say it's tight. And we consistently park 5 or 6 people in that lot. We have gotten as many as 10 people in there, but that was sort of a holiday event type of thing, and we didn't want to put people on the street. Were there other, what was the other?
Yes, so could you talk about I think one of them was the aisle width? Is that the way that the dimensions currently exist with the parking?
Yes.
And
The aisle width
also,
in the back, that's, yeah.
yeah, and then if you could talk about the landscape buffers again.
Landscape buffers.
And then I think that you had indicated the FAR is required really because of your porches, is that correct?
Yeah.
And that's the only reason?
The porches are pushing us
Okay.
there to that level. So the landscape buffers. So in the township, which doesn't exist anymore, when you have a business zone next to a residential zone, you need to have a 50-foot landscape buffer. Okay? Our property, this property is up against 2 residential zones, because there's one from, was it R9?
R9 zone in the R4 zone.
R9 and R4.
So the entire building is in it.
Right, so the entire existing structure is actually in the landscape buffer. So,
You can't essentially build anything except for the yellow area.
correct.
So does the zone line stop at the property line? Because it used to like kind of bisect them, does it?
So,
has it
no,
been adjusted?
the zoning line at this property runs in the gravel space between our 2 properties. It runs right through there.
Okay, so that's pretty much the property line
It's the
there.
center point of the
Yeah.
driveway.
Yeah, And then along the backside as
Is the
well?
rear, yeah.
The backside as well.
Okay,
It's a very unique property. It has, 3 layers of zoning from the historic district. You have the zoning, the B1, then you have the overlay, and then you have all of these different zones around it. It's a very,
Each-
right across the street, you have buildings that are, 2 stories higher, and then to the right, you have, and then in the rear, you have the residence. So it's an awkward zoning, really,
Right.
because it was never put in place very comprehensively,
The property abuts 4 different zones.
Yeah.
and then is there also a zoning requirement or a landscape requirement that you have to buffer parking? Is that a
So
requirement?
we do have, there is an actual landscape buffer that's between our property and the adjacent property.
But, I
I
mean,
guess you gotta go this-
is there a zoning requirement for that, like 15 feet or something like that? It's typically like if you have
I think it's 5 feet.
parking
I think we're compliant.
adjacent to a residence or to the right-of-way?
Oh, right, so it's for parking areas more than 10 cars, there's a larger one. But I believe we are compliant, with the exception of this 50-foot buffer.
Okay, I thought there was another one. So unfortunately, we don't obviously have the zoning or engineering report to,
Yeah. And in our preliminary, we've had many meetings with staff where they've gone through and identified variances that we've missed, like the conditional use one, when we had to share space, and they have not brought that up
Okay.
in terms of the parking.
Okay, so if
And we're
everyone,
enhancing that buffer,
Okay.
right, between the parking
Yes.
with some plantings,
Yes.
so, yeah.
again, I didn't have that landscape plan, so it's hard to tell.
so I think we're understanding the reasons for the variances. If there aren't any other comments at this time, I want to open it up to the public and take public comment now. So is there anyone from the public who'd like to say anything? Okay.
Remember my gun. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be on this side. My name's Leanna Jonke. I live on Linden Lane. I'm the executive director of Princeton Nursery School, and I'm also the chair of a very long-to-name committee. It's the Affordable Housing, Racial, Economic, Social Equity, and Services Committee. But I'm actually here just as a resident myself, so what I'll share is just my own beliefs and thoughts. So I really see how this project aligns with a lot of the work that I do professionally and the personal passions that I have as well. It addresses community needs, and it really does uplift and preserve Black history, which is very important here in Princeton. I was actually a part of the group that shared the community survey with local residents who might benefit from it. And literally the next day, a resident came up to me and said, "I can't believe we're going to have a laundromat." So the need is very much there. The excitement for this opportunity is very much there. I'm also the daughter of an immigrant who is an entrepreneur who owned a laundromat. So I spent a number of days folding laundry, seeing people come to the laundromat. But we quickly turned from owners of the laundromat to clients of the laundromat when we were then a low-income family. So we really relied on the laundromat to do our own laundry for 5 kids, 2 parents, and a number of grandparents that lived with us. I lived in rural Pennsylvania, so it was not possible to walk to the laundromat. And so we would see the piles pile up. We had concerns for what clothes are we going to wear, even though we were 4 sisters, we shared a lot. But dirty laundry could really prevent you from taking part in experiences as a student and then as parents as well, to be able to go to work with clean clothes. So I can personally really relate to this project and the benefit that it would have. Here we have the possibility to walk, and to be able to walk to a location that's so convenient, it really reduces those barriers. And so I just ask for the Commission's really wonderful support to continue removing barriers that Josh and his team might experience with this really wonderful project.
Oh, thank you.
So much. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else like to make any comments or have any questions? If not, I'll close the public comment. Just want to make sure we get that covered. All right, so as far as what we need to do, I'm going to go back to Elizabeth's report. And at the end, it talks about what the commission should consider. And basically, we're asked to determine if the improvements are appropriate in terms of massing, if the question about the slate, whether that's appropriate, and then the variances. So if we see those necessary and if we support them. So I think in summary, the main issue I've heard come up is really the top section of the new building is rather prominent, and if there's a way to diminish the impact of that section, that would create a little more harmony between the new building and the existing building. Are there other suggestions or comments? And again, we are advisory to the zoning board, so we will be, Ed will be creating a memo. And maybe you have some questions, I don't know.
Well, I think the memo will generally say that the application is pretty swell and you recommend it. But I think there are some tinkering that you would like to see done, particularly with that, the new building and the upper level. Maybe the mass or whatever of that could be adjusted somewhat. But I think basically the board would, when they do the resolution, would endorse and recommend the approval of the variances in order to implement the plan.
Is there any kind of follow-up with what Ed said?
Just,
You have to talk in the mic.
I'd be pleased if you'd take a second look at some of the things which were brought up.
Right, so there's some issue about the grade and again, the prominence. I think it's, all goes back to sort of the prominence of the new building and creating something maybe less visually impactful for Charlotte and Frida and I guess at the upper level. So just want to make sure I cover everything. Any other comments? Yeah, Leighton.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo what Leanna Jonke said about the timeliness of both the architectural design, the homage it pays to the historical home that is seated next to it, but more importantly than that, the fact that we have a Latino population and many others who struggle in carrying their laundromat, clothing on bicycle from the neighborhood to the shopping center on a daily basis. And what a blessing it would be. And let's remember, historically, there was once a laundromat on Lee Avenue. And to revisit that again, to have the convenience of doing laundry right in the neighborhood you live in would be something that would be welcome by many of our neighbors and friends. So I want to thank you, not just for the architecture and the design, but for the thoughtfulness and approach to extending an olive branch to those that are bewildered, forgotten, and needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Leighton, and I agree that that should be part of our memo.
Good.
All right. Anything else? So I think we're pretty clear. Do we have to vote or anything, or?
Well, I think an oral motion to authorize the preparation of a report, which would, for the most part, recommend approval of this application by the zoning board. I think they'd like to get something from you that's relatively definitive, subject to the items you just discussed.
Okay, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we hit all the comments that were made here. Obviously, that top studio area, I think that the height of the railing.
Comments about the Kelvin, the lighting,
Oh,
Right.
yeah,
utilities underground, and we would
Yep.
pull those things out of her report.
right.
Yeah, well,
Sure.
And then also, just to get a read from the commission, the solar, the replacement slate, I heard people saying that they don't have a problem, just wanted a consensus, the signage, also the variances, which you talked about, and then the positioning and the view of the building along Lee. So I think that those are the things that I had written down, that I just want to make sure that we include that in, include that in whatever motion's made.
Okay, thank you. Yep. All right. So is there a motion to endorse the project with the comments that we've made?
So moved.
Okay, Shirley, and seconded by Frida. All right. You want to do a roll call vote on that?
Yes. Ms. Satterfield?
Yes.
Mr. Shatskin?
Yes.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Mr. Endersby?
Yes.
Ms. Charlotte Friedman? Chairperson Capizzoli?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks
Thank
for
you
this
so much.
presentation.
Thanks.
Lot of work. Lot of work. Okay.
And it's just getting started.
Yeah.
Really?
You know, I think it may have been. That's possibly, and we resubmitted the application twice to address this comment.
Oh, for the landscape. I didn't, yeah, I didn't.
Resubmitted maybe the landscape.
Yeah, no, I didn't either.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth, did you have any reports or anything like that?
I did not, but I think that we kind of deferred to now to talk about members who might be going to the conference and if they wanted to collect afterwards to see if some of them wanted to carpool.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can go because we're traveling and so it might be too tight for me.
Okay. Frida, are you going? Okay, and I'm going to go too, and I think that Shirley's going the second day, right? So I'm going to be going both days, but I'm not staying over, though. I'm just driving, so maybe we can talk afterwards and see.
I have to go to Minneapolis because my dad just turned 90.
I know. I'm excited for him. I hope I reach that age.
Wow. So anything else? If not, is there a motion to adjourn? Okay. Alric. Second by Charlotte.
You know what? I do have
What?
some information.
Well,
I'm
hang on.
sorry.
What?
I do have some information. So the King Constructions project, when the project was resubmitted, it, as you know, from the subcommittee, it didn't really include the things that we thought. And I had talked to the planning director, and they're not going to be able to see it before July. And he felt that because it was not submitted with the revisions that we thought were coming in, that it should go back to HPC, you know, and just let the whole commission review it again. And I talked to the attorney, and I'm going to meet with him and their architect to go over the comments that the subcommittee made, and I did let him know that that was the direction that the planning director felt that it should go. I think he was disappointed, but at the same time, he's not getting there any sooner, so I don't think it matters.
Okay, well, thank you. Thanks for that update.
As a side note,
Yep.
it was mentioned to me that the Momo project is no longer.
I don't know, let's close. All right, thanks, everybody.